Well, you guys will love this story. I was like, and this is not a wedding I did, but we did a project with a Holocaust survivor. He was like in Auschwitz. He got picked by Dr. Mengele and all this stuff. So his daughter calls and goes, my father died, and I want you to come to the funeral. So I'd never been to a Jewish funeral before. So you go and you do and I'm in my black shirt, and we're standing at the graves, and the rabbi goes, all right, we're gonna, now we're gonna fill it in. They bring out 4 shovels, and they literally fill the grave while you're sitting there. That's so. I'm sitting there with Dana, and I go, Dana, I want to fill. I've never done that. We like throw a shovel full of dirt on it. I go, Mickey would like that, right? He would like that. And she goes, yeah, just if you want to do it, just do it. Go do it. I'm like saying, I go, I'll wait. So I wait till like the last, everyone's cleared out.
Yeah.
And so we show up. I go up and I pick up the shovel, and the funeral director is talking to the rabbi, and I take one shovelful and throw it in the grave. And the funeral director looks at me and goes, stop! No! Stop! And I go, oh my God, I've like offended the Holocaust survivors funeral. Like what? And what had happened was the rabbi had told her, like, hey, don't put any more dirt because we won't be able to put the top on. But to everyone at this funeral,
looked like some Christian, some pastor, like you're tamping the dirt down with a shovel.
I'm like, let me get in there and just.
You stay dead.
And then all these friends came up here, and they're like, look, I don't know what happened, but Mickey would have loved to have you throw dirt on his casket. Like, no, I didn't think that's what happened. Fine. You're our guest here. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is so good. That was so good.
And it's funny because then you do see, like you mentioned with that pastoral care aspect, I mean, really believing that either we're the presence of Jesus or helping reveal the presence of Jesus, or depending on the family and the situation. I mean, sometimes a funeral can be so beautiful for their faith. Their faith, you really see the faith shine through, and you say, that's what this is all about. And so that could be a whole nother episode of the people whose faith has really shone through. It's not as funny, but
no.
Yeah.
And it's almost productive.
Funerals, if anything, we're helping maintain some kind of Christian culture of death and dying, and weddings have become so such weird fantasies. No one's like, oh, I've been dreaming about my funeral since I was a little girl.
Yeah, right?
So the serious question is, how would you do, or have you ever had to do, or how would you do, like, I know a couple of our people we went to seminary with, or at least one, were in pastor of a congregation where somebody had done something notoriously wrong, some kind of crime.
Yeah.
And they were attached to their congregation. How would you do, a funeral for someone that you knew, whether through like, an act or whatever, committed some horrible crime? Would it change, how your approach to it? If somebody who was like despised by the public, it had been like a serial killer or, convicted, sexual predator or something along those lines, would that change your approach to, whether your sermon or anything like that?
I've had 2 situations. One was connected to a serial killer when I first started with the Unabomber. And that, I was always trying to say, like, how do we figure out, and I didn't he's still alive, but it was his confidant who owned all his stuff and wanted to get baptized and thought he was going to be mad that she got baptized. But it was like, how do we make this good news? So it's like, the alienation he felt that led him to these acts of violence is understandable, but it's not where this ends, that's part of it. But when Will mentioned suicide, we did a suicide of a boy that I'd known his whole life, and he shot himself in 8th grade and killed himself. And that had a certain notoriety to the degree that, like a lot of the parents and kids are all freaked out that this has happened and this possibly happened, and that it could happen again with one of their kids, and like the moral dimension of that. So it was important, at least to me, I felt, to say, because I'd known this kid his whole life and he was my daughter's good friend, to say, like, okay, look, a lot of the adults here don't know how to deal with your grief. We have no idea how to deal with your grief. So don't let that be an excuse not to grieve. And remember, and the good news. And I use the prodigal son a lot for a lot of reconciliation. I go, even if the son forgets, the father never forgets. And that's what makes him a son. I think it's so important that people need to see Christianity has the message of grace that can speak into these real world situations and actually be good news, and not just have Christianity reduced to a kind of moralism that can't handle bad things. Which is, I think, why in many cases Christianity has a reputation for being irrelevant. But those are and those are two moments that I've used, and some of it I think is just preaching to myself. What do I need to hear to get through this sad situation? But some of it's saying like, well, if we really believe God is redeeming, then this has to be redeemable too. And I think I draw a pretty stark line between God is not the author of evil. God doesn't kill children. God doesn't commit crimes. God isn't. So I'm not sort of a Calvinist. God's sovereign, and we just can't understand. This is what God has come to heal and repair. And I think especially and then I'll stop because I'm just monologuing. But especially when people feel like their loved one is beyond them, whether it's through addiction or through violence, or it's like, well, Jesus can shepherd them in a way we can't reach this person now; they're beyond our reach.
Right.
So our powerlessness isn't God's powerlessness. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear some other thoughts on that serious question that Jeff asked. It only took us 2 hours to get serious.
Yeah, right.
We'll end it on that. Yeah.
Nobody's going to be watching by this point.
Watching from the first point.
Yeah.
Right. So go ahead, Will.
I think that there is something to be said for being able to make the statement that we can trust them to God. That is, and that is, it's not a cop out. It's, it's not an easy answer. It's actually a very difficult answer. But that, in the end, we trust them to God the same way we do everyone else. And God has them. I mean, I've done funerals for fathers who their kids had nothing good to say about them at all, and I think part of it is that you can name that they were mean, awful people, but God still has them, and we can trust that, whatever that looks like.
And I think that's helpful because so much of funeral culture is pretending people are better than they are. It's sort of like the best version of this person. And you can name the broken relationships, and you can do it in a subtle or tactful way. But I think that's really helpful to say, for what this person was, which we all know, they still can belong to God, or we can trust God. So I think that's putting the emphasis on the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew?
No, I've done a lot of, I resonate with all of these things. Because I've done quite a few suicides, and I've had both where the kids are like, yeah, my mom or dad or this, and that becomes, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, that becomes very trying to prepare for that. For me, it just becomes more of I don't want to say like faith building, but it's just bring me like to engage a different part of my faith, and how do I bring that across and speak the gospel message, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do that, especially with suicides. And Jim, you were talking about you knew this kid that killed himself. This is the same in my first call there. We had this, if there was ever a kid who is like, he is totally on track to do some kind of ministry or become a pastor or do something. It was this kid. And then you get the phone call from the sheriff saying, I need you to come tell so and so that their son shot themselves in the face. How do you do that? And it was, that was such a powerful moment. And then to have done some other ones and just trying to bring God into that, and giving that person over to God, be it through suicide or potential honestly, potential molestation and things like that you just may not know about or what have you. So that was a really good question, and it's really difficult. But oddly enough, those are some times for me that are some of the most powerful in terms of the vocation that we're all in and what we're called to do. And actually those are moments where, where I may say, or I may say before that, gosh, really, God, is this where you want me? And then to have those experiences personally, just to be like, yeah, look what we're able to do, and then be able to do that together with those gathered. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think it's important because so many in my experience, so many people, when they're in that moment that you got called into, they really have no idea what to do. They've done no thinking about it. You can't really plan. And to have someone like you that has that experience or has the ability to navigate the grief of all of this and lead them through this moment. I mean, I think that is something that we provide that very few people can provide, which is we're comfortable in that situation. Like, we've been in that, we'll be in it again. And we're some of the few people that can say, okay, well, here's the next step, whether it's practical, spiritual, whatever it is. And that's only gained through experience.
Yeah, and I've started some of my funeral sermons that way, where I just immediately identify, like, yeah, we shouldn't be here. This doesn't make sense while we're together. Yeah. But
you don't try to sugarcoat it or lie.
Yeah, because
very honest.
Yeah, and again, in one of my calls, there was another church, and a member committed suicide, and to this day, I can understand. I mean, the pastor stood up there, and his whole sermon was how that person is just in hell, and the suffering, and anyone connected to this person or might have had an inclination that this person would do that is also now headed to hell, and everything. And I mean, everyone like walked out of that sermon. Like, people got up. He started to say that, and people just got up and left. The family just got up and left, and they were members of that church.
Yeah.
And then his sermon on Sunday was how it was just proof, when people got up and left, how destined to hell they were.
Yeah. And I've seen that, and that's like almost like a whole separate topic, but I've seen that too, where I've gone to a funeral of a family member, of one of the members of my congregation. A family member passed away, and so go to the church for their service, and not the exact same thing, but something similar, where the pastor got up, and it was a like witness testimony funeral sermon, and how you need to have Jesus or you're going to hell. And what made it even worse was, a good part, like a quarter of the family, one of the sons married a woman who was Hindu, and all of her family is Hindu. And there were so many of them there to support the family during the grieving process. And the pastor knew this, and yet he gives this big message about, if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're going to hell. And I just thought, like, wow, if they're not going to get converted with that, I don't know what will do it. It was such an inappropriate message. One, I don't agree with that theology anyway, but it was just an inappropriate message. And so, all right, so then tying that into, and maybe I'll just, when I edit this together, I'll just use the second part of this video, but how do you deal with, all right, so I've had situations where people have said, that have been family members, what have you, and come and say, like, well, it was part of God's plan, and we're okay with that. Or when somebody brings, when a family member who is trying to do their best to console or help, a friend, and they bring really bad theology into that mix, not with any, not in a malicious way, but just they bring it in, or God need another angel, or, this was God's plan, how do you address those head on, or do you kind of let them play out, and then just when you're talking, kind of pepper in what we believe?
I think, on one hand, I let people speak, because that's them trying to work through their own grief, or distance themselves from their grief. And I think sometimes that's the hellfire and brimstone pastor is doing the same thing, kind of distancing himself from the grief he's feeling and the sadness of the moment. I don't necessarily, I don't correct it like an argument, because I think arguing with people doesn't produce anything. Yeah. But I'll represent my own position, where I just say, well, I don't think so. Or someone will go, everything happens for a reason. I believe that firmly. And I go, well, everything may happen for a reason, but not everything is God's reason. The kid who shot himself didn't It wasn't some master plan in the file cabinet in the sky. Sorry, you pulled the suicide ticket. So I address it gently. Certainly in my preaching, I address it. Like, I had a murder. One of the people in my parish got murdered, and the funeral was really intense. And that was, his ex-wife got up and basically said what you just said. Like, look, we don't know why, but blah, blah, blah. And then I got up in my sermon and I said, I don't think God kills people. And God, I mean, it's, to me, that just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, and it wasn't, I think part of the art of pastoring is figuring out how to represent things gently and in a way that someone doesn't feel like they're being eliminated by your perspective. So I think it's helpful to do. And I had a lady once call me and she said, I want you to do my funeral because we have a Japanese pastor right now, and my fiance got killed in the Pacific, and there's no way in hell a Jap's going to do my funeral. Like,
jeez.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, okay, well,
Yeah.
like,
Wow.
you go like, that's really racist. Like, we can't. And I didn't say that. Like, you're really racist. I go, well, that's
Right.
not. There's a few problems with what you're asking. A, I'm not the pastor of your church. B, the request is not appropriate, kind of what you said. But you know what she's speaking out of is someone she loved a long time ago got killed in a war, and that has made her sad and angry for 50 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's, I acknowledge in other people as I acknowledge myself human frailty, you know, and I have my own issues that I struggle with and my own prejudices, and but I also think there needs to be some consistent witness to a version of God that's not just some weird, where God wields death like God wields anything else. I think God's changed death. I think Jesus has changed death and broken the power of death and made it something different than it was before. But you know, some of the stuff people says is crazy or just really inappropriate. Especially that God needed a flower. God's like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's true, that's not the God I know or want to be doing what I'm like, then I need to get out of this job. Yeah.
I'll use the weeds and the wheat. I'll go, look, the God we're talking about only plants wheat. So there's weeds, there's stuff entangled, but the God we're talking about only plants wheat. So if there's other stuff that's not from God, but that will be redeemed, and it will be burned in the fire, and not in the fire of hell, but in the fire of love. You know,
Right.
God's love will purify.
Yeah. And so Will, I'm going to bring up one of these memory stories, and you'll either remember or you won't. But so Andrew, you and Jim did your seminary chaplaincy together. Will and I did ours together. And the very first night I was on call, the last one call I received, all right, here we go, is the last one was, you know, that one you don't want to get, where I called the hospital after my pager went off, and it was, you know, maternity ward, and I went, okay, well, this is not good. So a woman had delivered a baby. The baby was born alive, but baby had a lot of issues, and they knew the baby would have a lot of issues, and ended up passing away like 2 hours afterwards. And it was at Children's across town where you guys had been. And so one of our classmates was actually on call that evening too. And I ended up spending time with the family for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, till the baby was brought back over to our hospital. And it was just, there's a whole other story with that there. But then the next day, Will was on call. And they had, the hospital had prepared like a keepsake box for the family. And so Will contacted me and he said, hey, do you want to go up with me as I take this keepsake box to the family? Since you were with them last night. And I said, sure. And so we went and we presented Will presented the box to her, and the mother was very thankful, and, you know, the grandma was there. And the mom said, kind of think what you were saying, Jim, about expressing her grief. She said, you know, we realized, we talked about it after you left, why this happened. And you had mentioned that you were trained to be a pastor, and, you know, God needed you to have this experience so you could help other people in the future that go through this. So we were able to help you and provide that, you know, this provided that for you. And, you know, I remember looking at her going like, oh, okay, you know, and if you need anything else, please let us know. And I remember walking out in the hallway, walking towards the elevator, and I turned to Will and I said, if God ever effing kills a baby to help me do anything, then I don't want to do this, you know. And Will was like, yeah, that's not what happened, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, dealing with that. But I guess I'm just closing up by saying, for us too, as pastors, as we deal with that and wrestle with what does that mean for our life? What does it mean for ministry? And how are we transformed through the events in other people's lives? So I realized I took a very serious arc. We started out, I was definitely laughing and smiling more at the beginning of this, but I still feel just as filled. I feel just as filled with all of this. What did you say, Will?
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
You are welcome. I'm just trying to.
I can bring it back up with a serial killer story if you want.
Yeah. Well, Andrew's on a tight schedule, so you can do it quick.
Andrew, where do you have to be?
Huh?
He's got somebody coming to his church between 1:30 and 8:30, so he has to be. He's got to go catch some Pokemon. So you got to.
Wow, we're just bringing it all out.
When this confidant of the Unabomber died, I mean, they were very close, very close. She died in one of the houses of my congregation because she didn't want to die by herself. She didn't have any friends. So we're doing this beautiful communion service, and sometimes before people die, they kind of curl up almost like a bug because their bodies, so she's like curling up. And the guy whose house she's in, like, we're doing this sort of commendation of the dying, and he keeps looking at his watch. And I go, "What? She doesn't have to be anywhere. And you're home, And he goes, "No." He goes, "Ted, he's the Unabomber. Ted's sending someone to say goodbye. And he's going to be here in like 5 minutes. We got to kind of." So this dude rolls up to the house named Facundo from LA. And he just like comes in, like, and if you can think like who would be an acolyte of the Unabomber 20 years later, Facundo from LA, like, he's the one that got all of Ted's encyclopedias out of the storage unit. So he comes in and he goes, "Hey," and we go, "You Facundo?" And he's like, "Yeah." And we're like, did Ted send something? He's like, "Yeah, Ted made a gift for her. Her name was Joy. Ted made a gift for Joy." And we go, what is it? And he goes, "He wrote a trombone duet and mailed it to me, and I've synthesized it, and he wants me to play it for her." And we're like, the Unabomber wrote a trombone duet. He's like, "Uh-huh." So, she's like curled up in this bed. He puts like headphones on her, like what Jeff's wearing. And this lady's about to die, and some of the last things she hears is. And then he goes, "Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for letting me come in. I'll let Ted know that."
Was it good? Was it good or no?
I gotta hear it because he was like, "This isn't for you. It's for her."
Oh man!
Yeah, and I kind of like trombones, so it's like, well, I guess I missed out.
Yeah.
Maybe all of us would have liked to hear it, Facundo.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to become friends with the Unabomber, and then you'll get your own when you die.
Yeah, maybe that. Will, can you write a trombone duet for my funeral?
I can do that for you. Yeah, but only you can hear it.
That's
the deal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We met at Taco Bell a couple times before.
Yep.
Wow. Nice. Way to bring that back around.
I'll be burning the pile of garbage at your funeral.
Yeah.
And Andrew will come stabbed.
Yeah.
You can share thoughts over a Baja Blast.
We can just mix your we can put your ashes into some sauce packets and then just mix them
Spicy
in.
hot.
Yeah.
Spicy queso.
Wow.
All right. You want to wrap it up, Andrew, or do you want somebody else to do it?
Why don't you go ahead and do it there, Beardsley?
Right. Super Chief. All right.
Hey, are you ready with the button this time?
Yeah, he'll be right. He's going to stop it. So, Jim, just so you know, just a fair warning, Andrew is a thing where he'll stop it, and then he'll actually end the call while we're mid-sentence. So just be ready.
I did that once.
And they'll be like, "You can come back." And I'm like, "No, you kicked me out. You kicked me out. That's fine." So, yeah, keep your hands up behind your head. I don't want you operating the mouse with your foot or anything like that. So I want to say thank you once again for Pastor Jim from the West Coast, California, making that 3-hour time travel for us to be here with us. It's almost ready for lunch. Thank you for Will, Indiana. Andrew, clean your hands. Thank you again. Will, love having him here. Andrew, I want to say thank you to you because you are the catalyst. You are the Peter to my Judas. And so I appreciate your ministry and you lifting high the cross of the chasuble each week so that we can do this. So from New York.
One of these calls, I keep telling Grant he's coming in on this weekend.
Yeah, Grant's got to get in there. So, and then me from Ohio, thank you everybody once again. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you liked it, click the subscribe button or leave a note, that would be fantastic. And from all of us.
Snaps coming.
Snaps, I want some more snappy.
We need some more snaps.
So thank you all and have a blessed day. Hit the button.